So good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for a conversation with Frankie Myers, who you may have heard is running for the 2nd District Assembly seat here in Humboldt County and throughout the North Coast. So my name is Ross Gordon, and I'm the Policy Director with Humboldt County Growers Alliance, and we're the trade association that represents small legal cannabis businesses here in Humboldt County. And we're very excited to have endorsed Frankie's campaign for Assembly. And really looking forward to talking with him today and hearing more from him about his vision for the North Coast. Also joined by Nat Pennington here, who's one of our members at HCGA, and I know has worked with Frankie for a long time on a number of different projects. So Nat, maybe I'll hand it over to you and you can introduce yourself and maybe introduce Frankie too.
Sure. Thanks, Ross. Once again, Nat Pennington. I am the founder and CEO at Humboldt Seed Company, and we are a pretty long-lived cannabis seed company here in Humboldt County. Prior to really, having the opportunity to work in that space, I was really involved with fisheries, salmon restoration locally, particularly out in the Klamath River. Helped to get the Klamath Dam removal project going, worked tirelessly with Frankie, and Frankie really, was a major troubadour and hero in that regard, and did some genomics projects on spring and fall run Chinook. And currently we actually, along with our seed company, we actually have a nonprofit that we still run and co-founded with a group of multi-local indigenous youth, but predominantly Yurok youth, called Nature Rights Council, and its primary program, the Ancestral Guard. So still pretty involved in the world out there, and we really just do admin for that program. But yeah, been amazing working with Frankie, and definitely really excited for his candidacy, and excited to have him in the space talking economics and restoration and all the things. Frankie, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you decide to run and whatnot?
Yeah, thanks for that. Appreciate y'all giving me a chance to talk. We go way back, now back to the day when we were both young fisheries folks out there hitting the water, doing dives together. Much appreciation for our continued friendship throughout all the years. Always have a lot of love and respect for you and all the work that you've done to not only help move the fisheries issues along the Klamath Basin, but really understanding the place you're at and helping elevate Native voices like mine and so many others to really be able to help articulate our story, and not just being a good ally, being a good friend, and being a good community member, being a part of our tribe. It means a lot to me, and a good business partner as well. I think it's a bit of everything. So always appreciate it. I think you're a all around good guy as well. Not a bad friend, but a good person. So I appreciate you that. I'm running for state assembly. There's a laundry list of reasons why I am, for sure. And I've thought about this question a lot. I think in my role as the vice chair for the Yurok tribe, we've had a lot of issues come to the forefront for us to work on within our community, whether it's housing, environmental justice, fighting for fisheries, working on, bringing a different brand of economy, restoration economy, building our economic portfolio, on the reservation, off the reservation, nationwide, as well as building some really interesting things within Yurok that I think would be phenomenal for the whole district, including restorative justice and community policing. But most importantly, I think I'm running for state assembly because I can. And I know most of you folks out there know the history of tribes in the nation, but here in Humboldt, we also have our history. It wasn't too long ago this year, we're celebrating the 100th year anniversary of Native Americans having the right to vote. When my dad was born, it was illegal for us to pray. Uh, my generation is the first generation of Native Americans who have the right to religious freedom and the right to vote and participate in democracy at the same time. That's huge. And I think beyond that, the ability to represent not just our tribal communities, but the larger community with these ideas that have been handed down from generation to generation, it's exciting time to be alive. And I think now more than ever, these principles that, I grew up on that have been handed down, they're needed. They're needed in our communities. They're needed in our government.
Awesome. Well, one question I wanted to ask you, Frankie, we spoke a couple of weeks ago, and I think one thing which really resonated with me personally, and I think resonates with a lot of farmers I talk to, is this idea of a restoration economy. And I know for us at HCGA and for a lot of our farmers, many are folks who have been farming cannabis in this community for a long time. And I think we really see what we're trying to do as a generational project. We want to really create something sustainable over the long term that's going to benefit our community. And to us, that means that we really need to see ourselves within the greater context of everything else within our community. And so wanted to just ask you, when you talk about a restoration economy, what that means for you, both, in your capacity right now with the Yurok tribe and also for the North Coast as a whole, and how you sort of see cannabis potentially fitting into that vision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the part that I get excited about, right? Because it's a different way of looking at economies, and it's a much older way that I think that we've been able to sustain here for thousands of years. And it is the counter to the extractive industry that I think so much of us are used to, where you go and you take, and then you make a profit off it, right? And those profits leave your community, they go someplace to be held by very, very wealthy people. I think for our vision of a restoration economy, it really means keeping both the profits, but also the actual work within the communities and the basins that we live in, right? So, for instance, when we're talking a restoration economy for fisheries work, it is about ensuring that the people that are affected by the negative impacts to fisheries are a part of the work that's getting done to restore it, right? So there's this holistic aspect where you ensure that the work being done to restore a fisheries is being done by the people who are affected by the negative impact of that. When we think about forestry restoration and upland prairie restoration, we want to ensure that the people who are up there that are working out in our forests are connected to it. And I think that same thing applies to every other aspect of any industry we're talking about. And when we're talking about the cannabis industry, we want to make sure that the people who are out there working and doing the work are part of our community, and that the funds and profits from that go back into the community again to help create a sustainable, restored economy for our communities. Right here on the North Coast, we depend on one another. We depend on our neighbors, and it's less about a specific action. A restoration economy is less about like a specific action to be taken, and more about a reciprocal relationship with the industry that you're in. And that's, if we talk about logging, it's the same thing. We practice this idea of restoration economy with our logging practices as well, restoring our upland prairies by using logging practices. We don't think that there is a disconnect. And as you continue to expand these ideas of restoration economy, they come into play across the board. And whether you're talking about offshore wind or cannabis or fisheries work or forestry or you name it, this concept can be applied. And I think it's important now for us to start using it. And it's really exciting to think about how the cannabis in our industry already is kind of leaning towards this model, right? I mean, it makes sense that you work within the people in your community, just as far as just personnel as well, right? The people you trust, the people you work with, that you create this network of individuals who help support your business and you support theirs. So it's an exciting, I think, time as we see how it can scale, right? How we scale this idea beyond our communities. We start connecting communities one to another. I think we add in, food sovereignty and how that works, and it can be something that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, the one question that I wrote down, ironically, you kind of addressed it just now, but I'll go ahead. We've worked together for many years in many settings. We've known each other for 20 years. Largely, we've been involved with government and advocacy, our work together doing, many trips to the headquarters of Pacificor for the Klamath Dam removal, along with many trips to all the Red Lions that you can think of to have the settlement negotiation meetings and other hotels, but lots of Red Lion. But recently,
Lots of Red Lions. I don't know how we can't avoid those, but it's
know.
true. Yeah.
It's funny. But more recently, I've become really entrenched in the challenges facing our region's small businesses. New economies like cannabis, and then age-old jobs like fisheries. Do you think that there's a way forward to dovetail environment and the economy and still hopefully get away from having to be kind of reliant on outside input like government handouts? Grants are great. We've both gotten
Absolutely. We'll take that free money 100%. It's
Yeah.
hard to build an economy. It's hard to build an economy on grants though, right? Because that's just not how the system's set up for you. And the tribe for a long time was very, and still is, pretty heavily dependent on grants. And what we have learned, and I think what we all learn the minute you get in a grant cycle, is it's much less about what you want to do and more tailoring towards what people think is good for you or good for your community. And then you've got to kind of mesh it to what you actually want to do. That's why I think sustainable economies are so extremely important, because no one knows better the work that needs to get done in your community than you do, right? People who are living there, we're living the experience, we understand what we want, we understand what we need. And it is very interesting to look to see how we build these economies outside of that. And I think more importantly, one of these values that I was taught and that's been handed down is this idea that there's no inherent evil in this world, right? That things are inherently evil by themselves. And I'll use the logging industry where, the same folks with the same equipment, chainsaws and bulldozers and excavators, they can destroy a watershed, right? They can obliterate it, clear cut it, and absolutely lay waste to it. Those same individuals with that same equipment doing restoration can rebuild a watershed. They can rebuild a forest, right? They can create these really healthy ecosystems. And I think that's exactly this idea we need to start talking about around cannabis, right? I mean, you have the same plant, same product done at a massive scale that, levels and completely destroys an environment. No one want that to be terrible, right? Like that is something that none of us would want to see. We're part of this world, we're part of this earth, and if we want to destroy it, that's a great way to do it. You take that same sort of practice and that same product, and you have it work within an ecosystem. You help it to develop within the ecosystem, and you look at it as being something that can be beneficial. I think you have something that could be really amazing, and they are, right? I think one of the things that I've been drawn to, because I've been in this cannabis discussions for a long time, been part of both sides on the regulatory side, now in it, practice back in the day. So I've seen the evolution, and I've seen this testament that my grandma talked to me about is there's no inherent evil, it's what you do. I've seen that happen, right? I've seen it literally unfold all the way across the board where I've seen very, very negative ways of growing cannabis within our watersheds of people that are not from here, other side of the ocean, making really bad choices and doing really terrible practices. And then I've seen people that I won't point you out specifically now, but I've seen other individuals who have done amazing work, right? And who have really melded to this idea that we're part of the world, who have done phenomenal things with their industry and with the profits from it. And I think it's just a testament to this idea that the truths that we have of living here for thousands of years absolutely get applied today, right? And when you apply them to the cannabis industry, you get amazing products, not just actual product, but so many more beneficial practices outside of that. So 100%, yeah, I don't think there's rarely ever any instance I've ever come across where it's like, oh, well, you can only do one thing, you can't do another thing. I think systems are supposed to be dynamic. They're supposed to have a bit of chaos into them, but I absolutely think there's a way to work in, and I've seen it, right? I've actually seen it happen. I've seen it boots on the ground where things are working within the ecosystem and benefiting not only the ecosystem, but people as well, right? I mean, we are a part of the world. We're part of this ecosystem, and so things need to benefit us as well. So I absolutely have. I've seen amazing work done to help create prairies, to restore landscapes, to thin out. 1,000% without a doubt, there is a very clear path of how we continue to scale a sustainable cannabis industry, not only for here, but across the board as well.
Yeah.
And I don't even think it's one of those things where it's like, oh, we've got to figure it out. It's like this. It's like, no, we actually, like, there's a lot of really good models of how we can do this.
Yeah. And, when hopefully we have you as our representative, I mean, I really don't even need to ask this, but, I know that you're going to be a voice for those small businesses. And I know that from a regulatory standpoint, you understand, that things like not being able to access customers because you have to, your product has to go to, a distributor in Sacramento to be able to be sold in the store in Arcata, and just all of these little death by a thousand cuts that are kind of happening to these small North Coast businesses that don't really, it's not like a sacrifice that it has a harm. It's a regulation that's I think sometimes, and I'm not one to just cut all the red tape. There's a point in red tape.
Yeah.
But I'm also just like, wow, we need to rethink how we can support small value added businesses, whether it's let's figure out how we can create shared commercial kitchens so that, people up on your reservation, like people can access customers for smoked fish. I mean, I would love to walk into the local co-op and be able to get some of the salmon that you've shared with me over the years. And let's just figure out how we can do that. And I think that you're our guy that knows those pains and struggles. And let's figure out how we can have, locally grown cannabis, locally grown, it actually is pretty easy to sell vegetables, but there are a lot of things are difficult. And so
Yeah. No, and I think this is one of those things that now where honestly it's like, I hate like, copying other folks or whatever, other politicians, but there's, you hear on the campaign trail, like it's a mantra, right? Like everywhere you go, you hear the candidates forum, you'll hear it like 4 or 5 times, but this idea that a one size fits all, policy making doesn't work, right? And it's like, yeah, it is a pretty like cheesy campaigny thing to say, but it's true. Like it is really true, specifically in the cannabis industry, where if you're putting in a one size fits all sort of regulatory authority, you will inevitably ruin communities and small businesses, right? And the small businesses across the board, whether it's talking cannabis or anything else, are really the backbone of this district, the backbone of the country, right? Those things are true. And this idea of one size fits all policy Although it does sound like a hacky campaign, it's true. It really is true. And I think the
Oh,
more local control we can have, the better it is. I think that's one of those things. I don't know if we want to dip into measure A or not, but it's one of the things that really kind of rubbed me the wrong way, right? It's like, I think as a tribal leader, first of all, put on my tribal leader hat here. Um, we really work hard to make sure that we use a collaborative effort, right? We take a collaborative approach to everything we do. Let's have conversations, let's work it out, let's figure out what the best for the entire community is. Let's go through the process regardless of how long the trial is. And we've seen really this become really successful, right? And whether it's we're talking MOUs with the Water Users Association or whatever it is, right? It's like this process does work. When you try to circumvent that and you try to dictate what happens, my knee-jerk reaction from my history as a tribal leader is hell no, right? No, that it's never going to work. We've seen it fail too many times. This I'm going to tell you what's best for you sort of mentality, it ain't right. As a tribal leader, we took the stance, absolutely, you don't get to come and tell sovereign nations what we are and aren't going to do. That is just inherently something we're not okay with. But also as a community member, right? Just as a constituent here of Humboldt County and Assembly District 2, I think it's the opposite of what you hear so often. Is we want local based solutions, and we want people coming together in a collaborative effort to solving these problems. And I think this really represents the opposite of that, right?
I mean, for folks that are listening, I would encourage folks to get out and vote this year, or this. What's the date, Ross? You might know exactly.
March 5th is
March
the
5th.
last day you can vote. Yes.
Okay. And
If you're
definitely
questioning and you didn't get your ballot, go in, do it anyway. You can make it happen, push for it. Sometimes it works, sometimes but definitely show up. These sort of initiatives shape our communities. You got to come out and vote. You have to have your voice said. If you're out there, vote for me too, might as well. But these are the issues, right? This is where government, this is where the rubber hits the road here when it comes to our daily lives and how it affects our communities. This is the point where it's like it takes active citizenship. Like we need active citizenship to ensure that what our community looks like is what we actually want it to look like, and the laws are in place really reflect our communities.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to say, Frankie, you said, you feared it might be a little bit of like a campaign stereotype to say, one size doesn't fit all. But I think it sort of gets to the root of a lot of these different issues, which is like if you're really creating policy and consultation with the community that's affected, you're going to, in my experience, find out that different people have different needs. And, you were talking about grant programs earlier, and, as cannabis farmers, like there are a number of grant programs which are out there, and a lot of them are really great and they do great things. And at the same time, I think most cannabis farmers would prefer to be able to be sustainable, right? And be able to have a viable business that doesn't have to rely on grants in order to be successful. And like you said, I think if you talk to most people, it's not really a mystery, like what types of things would have to change to make things more sustainable. Like Nat, you mentioned, oftentimes being required to work with a third-party distributor based out of Sacramento. Really tough to get your products to market if you're in that type of situation, and most people are. And I think as we're talking about, there's so many different cooperative and collaborative efforts that both as farmers, I think there's so many exciting things people are working on together, but also in connection with our broader community. Whether we're talking about tourism, whether we're talking about environmental improvements, I feel like there's really a lot of opportunity to make really positive changes. And so I super appreciate how you framed that, Frankie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's, you see this in government, it's like a pendulum, right? And it's always swinging one way or another. And I think that's one of those things as a tribal leader. I'm like, listen, can we stop this like huge pendulum swinging one way to another? Can we just find a nice sustainable balance in the middle here where it's not, wild west, do whatever you want, no regulation, but it's not kill the whole industry, overly burden regulation, where let's find a bit of like middle ground here, right? Something that's sustainable, something that can work. That isn't overly burdensome, but that isn't completely, do whatever you want. Because I mean, the truth is, right? We've seen it. As much as we like to believe that there's nothing but good people out there, and we're all here and we love this place, not everyone's from here, and not everyone has that idea, right? These are the places that we love, right? And I think the folks I work with, folks that we work with, and I got to know, they love the places they live, and they don't want them destroyed, right? None of us want our kids to grow up in toxic, destroyed ecosystems. We all want to live in a place that's protected and healthy. I think that's a shared value across the board in the industry and in the community. So I think just, let's find our way back to balance, right? I think that's like my overarching theme of the campaign is, can we find our way back to balance here, where it's not 100% extractive industry, that we talk about restoring the world around us, we restore economies, we restore our communities. Can we work towards balance? That's one of the things that we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to be constantly working towards balance again.
That's amazing, Frankie. It's inspirational. And I know that those are, that is I mean, from what I've heard, that's a big core part of Yurok living and Yurok, practice and restoring balance and fixing the world. And I mean, if the North Coast of California, if there's anywhere where we could do, stop the pendulum, and I think this is a good place. And I mean, I know that some of the other candidates probably have a lot more money to throw at campaign ads. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's even one of the ones that's got a bunch of big high level endorsements is just, moving to the area from Texas, and it really doesn't have a lot of, I mean, maybe it has some things to offer, but not that North Coast special.
I think, I've gotten to know them all pretty
Yeah,
well in a
I'm
couple
sure.
months. We've done a lot of interviews together. We've done a lot of candidate forums together. We've had sidebar conversations. Yeah, I don't think there's any bad people in the race. I don't think there's anyone that's malicious, that's trying to, really, destroy our community. Are there definitely varying layers of people who understand our community? For sure, right? For sure. There's a scale here on people who get who we are here. And I think, I've learned a lot, honestly, Ross, and now I've learned a lot about our political system and how it works, and how influential money can be, how influential corporate endorsements can be. And we hear it, you hear it on Jon Stewart, you hear it on Lena, you hear like, yeah, that's a part of it. It's different though, I think, for me, seeing it from the inside out, right? Kind of looking behind the curtain, watching out. It's a different sort of show, and how it works out when you get to learn the details of exactly how corporate money and corporate endorsements can sway folks. I had a really amazing conversation though. I got one of my first early on supporters, Assemblymember Ramos, had, kind of said, "Hey man, you think about running? Let's have a talk." And he said some stuff that was, really helped me and how I thought about this election in the community. I think one of the things he said was like, "Hey man, you're an Indian, you're a native, you're gonna have to work harder. You have to work harder than everyone else. That's just the way it is. Don't put too much thought in it. Just go with it." And then it was the other thing that, I've been kind of this mantra that I've been continuing is, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many endorsements you have. It doesn't honestly matter how much money you spend on your campaign, because it comes down to people voting, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it is. And um, as long as they could hear your message, they have a choice. So that's been my goal, right? I'm not trying to campaign against anyone. I don't feel like they're my competition. I don't feel like I'm running against Rusty or I'm running against Rogers. I don't feel like that's what I'm trying to do. I think what I've been trying to do in my campaign, which is what I believe is, get my message out there. If people can hear what I have to say, then they have a choice. right? There's a bunch of good candidates. There's one that's different. There's a different message. If you can hear my message and you believe in what I believe, you vote for me. And I think that's all I can ask for. You know, we've seen this in other races. Sometimes it's not about who has the most money, right? But you have to have some. You have to have some. There is a bottom line that this is still America. Love America, and shit ain't free. You still got to pay for stuff, right? Like mailers aren't free, ad time's not free. There is still a bit of fundraising, so I'm not gonna be like, oh, I'm not taking any money. Nah, bro. That's maybe one day we'll get there. We ain't there yet. So folks hear this, donate as well. I'll pitch myself, which I'm trying to get better at. But I think as long as you have the funding to get your message out there, it may not be fair, but it's an even fight.
Well, you told me, you said, I'm campaigning on $25 donations. So I said, well,
man.
Frankie, I can certainly help you there. So
I mean, I think that's, to me, that's way more impactful. I see my donation list, and it's like, folks donating $5, $20, $50. I'm like, that's like, I'm there, right? Because I feel like, I haven't really ever donated. I donate sometimes if I'm like, yeah, man, this is it. So when I see that come to me, like, I feel that, right? Like, I feel it. Like, I know you don't got to do that, and sometimes you don't got it. But that hits, right? Not that I don't love big donations coming in, but when an individual believes in you enough to go through the process and donate, that hits, man. I'm like, those are my people, and I appreciate it. And I feel every time I get a donation, I feel more responsible, right? To show up, work harder, go out, keep hustling, because there are things that do need to change. That Then there are things that need to be said, right? We need better representation in Sacramento, and I think the status quo has gotten us to this point, and I think we need a voice in Sacramento that represents us.
Yeah, and I also just want to pitch folks out there donating to Frankie's campaign. Seeing it, at least from my perspective, and maybe you have a different take on the race, Frankie, this to me looked like a very, very competitive race that could be very close. And I know it's not the most scientific poll in the world, but I saw the Los Coast Outpost poll the other day where you were leading, at least for Los Coast Outpost's readership rather. And so I think that's pretty incredible, knowing that some of the candidates have much bigger money behind them. And so I think that's a testament to what you're saying, right? That if you can get your message out, then people are going to hear it. So I want to be respectful of your time. I know we've been talking for a little bit here, and I know you're a busy person. So just want to see if you had any final thoughts you wanted to share with folks.
No, I mean, these are long days for sure, but it's always stuff I'm passionate about. So I always appreciate getting the opportunity to do exactly that, get my message out. I think one thing that's interesting, I watched the Loco poll as well. And I had heard rumors and conversations of other folks that there was officially polling that got done, and the local poll tracked right along the same numbers. And this was early on. And even more recently. And I think, you look at the folks who are spending that much money and their messaging, it does make me feel like, what I believe is true. And it's crazy the amount of money we're going to spend on this race, right? Like, this is Assembly District 2. It's a pretty rural area where a lot of folks up on the North Coast here that are spread out all over the place. We're going to spend millions, right? We'll spend over $3 million for an assembly race for the North Coast. Like, that is, it's very, very competitive. A lot of big names, a lot of folks pulling, a lot of funding in. I just feel like I've worked here long enough, and I've worked, in communities up and down this district, and I'm gonna be shocked, right? There's some folks that if they pull out, that's cool. I just don't think the North Coast can be bought. I don't think that's the type of community we are. I don't think I see it. I don't think that's us. Folks vote for folks because they believe in them 100%. But I don't think we're going to get swayed because of the amount of money people spend on it. So that's just my intuition, and maybe it's just the people. Maybe I just work with good people. I don't know. Maybe the people I work with are all good. It could be it. But I think in general, you have to have a bit of an attitude to live in this neck of the woods, to live up here on the North Coast, even down in Santa Rosa. You gotta get a bit of pride when you live in District 2. And like I said, I don't think we can be bought. I don't think district's for sale. Whoever wins, it'll be because that's what the people wanted.
Awesome. Well, I know I really agree with that. And just want to encourage everyone out there to make sure to vote. Make sure to vote for Frankie. Please donate to Frankie. And is there anything else people can do to support the campaign, or anywhere else you direct people?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's always, try to get folks out to vote. This might be a low turnout, so every vote is going to count. Make sure you remember to fill out your ballots. Go in, visit my website, votefrankiemyers.com. Check out my info. I try to make a good website so people could get me. If you have it, absolutely donate. I can always use it. And then just appreciate all the love and words out there. I think that the most powerful tool in any election is word of mouth, and folks telling other folks who they believe in, I think, is the strongest endorsement you can have.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Frankie. Thanks so much, Nat. And hopefully we'll be working with you in Sacramento soon.
Cool. All right.
All right.
Appreciate it.